Hi everybody. Well, as promised, we're going to make a video about handheld extruders. Many of you have told me as you joined our group that you have a handheld extruder and that you're just getting started with it. Some of you have also told me that you've had one for a while but haven't used it much. But I have a few, and I want to talk to you about what I have and how I use them and see if we can make it something that is more useful to you. They can be very handy in your pottery studio, but if you don't get off to a good start with them, they can be pretty frustrating. So we're going to see if we can remove some of that frustration and make it something that works into your way of creating things. So right off the bat, I think we're going to need a handheld extruder, and I have one. When I first got interested in extruding, I was putting together the extruder book. I contacted the folks at Kemper Tools, and realizing that they had this little guy, they sent me one and some dies, and I figured out pretty soon that for all intents and purposes with pottery clay it was useless. So I got a whole bunch of dies with it, and then I lost this one, wanting to use it for something. I actually found a use for it. Mind you, these are really for polymer clay, but I thought I could prove that I could use it in my studio for something with stoneware clay. And I lost it, like I said, and so I had to get more, and now I have a whole collection. I have all kinds of dies, and that's the end of that joke. Oh, I have one more for later, so stay tuned. But anyway, that's it for the Kemper clay gun. And now to the real matter at hand. How to use and how to set up, that is, your handheld extruder. Many of you are hearing about the idea that for just a few bucks you could get started with what amounts to a caulking gun from the hardware store. I know there are videos that explain how to use this, and they're quite good. I have never modified one of these to make it into a clay extruder, though I know with some PVC pipe and a little bit of cleverness in terms of how you attach the dies, you can get some pretty good results with these. The only thing that I've found is when I use this as a caulking gun, it's awful for me to use. My hands are not that strong. You would think they'd be strong as a potter and wedging clay and such, but these are a dickens for me to operate. So I never really got excited about proving that I could make an extruder with it, so I just gave up. But good for you if you want to try it. They are available. Like I said, a few modifications and you're extruding. You can make your own dies or find some that'll fit it, but good luck with that. Nevertheless, that's about as much as I want to say about this thing. What we want to really get to is the use of something like this. Now, this is a handheld extruder that I bought years ago from Chinese Clay Art online. I think, I have to confess that it's probably a copy of the Scott Creek Super Duper clay gun, which a number of you have, I know. The Scott Creek comes with a long barrel and a short barrel, as I recall, and it has a lot of the same features. It has a different means of grabbing onto the plunger release, but for the most part it's mechanically the same. And I have to tell you, this one compared to that caulking gun is a lot more comfortable on the hands, a lot easier to operate. I think there's a lot to be said for getting started if you want to try this with something commercially made and designed for what you're going to use it for extruding clay. This has a removable barrel, of course, as does the Scott Creek. The die holder is cast, good and strong. The barrel is aluminum, easy to keep clean and easy to wash up, that is. It all goes back together. I'll show you how we're going to assemble it with a die in it in just a second. This is the plunger that's inside. Here's the plunger itself. This is operated by holding down this trigger. I'm sure theirs is too. Somebody correct me if I'm mistaken about that. This can be disassembled. And if you don't know how to put it back together correctly, it will not work. So pay attention or take a picture of it with your iPhone with your camera phone, before you try disassembling it if you have to repair it or replace a spring or something. But pay attention to how it comes apart. I put mine back together wrong, and I thought I broke it. And then somebody else pointed out how to put it back together correctly. I got the thing going again. So it's simply a matter of pulling this back and putting your charge of clay in here, as we're going to do, getting it reassembled, and then you're ready to operate it. And as you'll see, do it like this. With simple operation of the hands, a little more resistance because you're going to have clay in there, this is how the thing moves the plunger arm through the barrel. And when you're finally toward the end, you can extract this and then take off your barrel and load another charge of clay or clean it at the end of your session. But mechanically very simple and simple to set up. The one thing as I'm talking to you that I want to remind you, same as your wall mounted extruders, if you can't operate this with ease while it's empty, you're not going to be able to operate it with ease while it's full of clay. So if this thing is behaving incorrectly, or if it's junked up or the springs are broken or something, don't expect it to operate when you have it full of clay. So check it first, like this, and then you know you're ready to go with making some extrusions. So that's it. I'm going to cut away, get set up for the next part of this. We'll be right back, and we'll show you how you get the thing set up for extruding. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Now it's all about getting off to a good start with this clay extruder. And the most important thing, as I say, I get a little preachy about this, but the thing I say about all the extruder work is start out with well-wedged clay. If you cut it out of the bag and jam it in there, you could do very well, provided that clay that's right out of your bag is already well wedged and it's the right consistency. If you're not sure, or if that clay has been in its bag for a while and it's gotten uneven, a little hard on the outside, then take the time and do a good wedging job. So enough of that. The idea being is that you want to make sure this barrel is clean. Mine is not. It's reasonably clean, but wash it out. Get it so the sides are smooth and free of old clay. And then get ready to load this thing with your clay. And what I did before I started the video up again was I rolled out what amounts to a large thick coil of clay that I checked to make sure it would fit in the barrel without coming out all over the sides. So take the time, know the length of the barrel, know how much of a charge of clay you can hold in there. You know, take a few of those steps rather than jamming it in there, getting a bunch of air trapped and having clay all over the sides. I mean, you're just making it a lot more difficult for yourself. So get ready to go. And the idea being is that you can attach the barrel to your extruder. You have the plunger pulled all the way back. You're ready to accommodate a charge of clay. You can drop it inside. Hopefully this will fit and I won't look foolish. Look at me. Look at me. So there you have it. You have a fully loaded barrel of clay. And you know, I didn't rehearse this before to prove that I'm going to do this well. So you and I are out here in the fool zone, and it all better go well. Otherwise, I have the power of editing. So we'll just see. At any rate, now you have the clay in it, so you're ready to go. You can do it another way too. You could have the die holder on the end with the die installed, take the barrel out, put it in that way. That doesn't make a bit of difference, but I mean, that's how I did it. So figure out which way you like the best. You can load it and screw everything together afterward. That doesn't make any difference. But with this in mind, I have it set aside. Now we're getting ready to put in a die. So right off the bat, you're going to discover that there are dies that you can get that are made 2-inch dies, 2-inch round dies that are designed for your extruder, just like the Scott Creek has. Here is Scott Creek's 8-piece clay gun handle die, very sexy. These are the dies themselves, poker chips, all kinds of shapes, very nice stuff. We'll use those in a minute. I think with this Chinese clay art set, I got some basically useless dies. I mean, this, folks, I think they sent me this die. Can you, my God, I think I could hurt myself if I tried to push much in the way of clay through something as small as this. That's one of the guiding principles in extruding, is if the opening is so small and the extruder is so big, holding all that much clay above it, you're asking for something to get broken. It's probably going to be you. So let's be real. I mean, you can get the work done. Here's one that makes a nice strap for those woven baskets that everybody likes, or you can make a flat handle or have the beginnings of one with this. It's a little bit bigger, a little less resistance. But if I look at this, I mean, they sent me this. You got to be kidding me. What is that? This has never been used. Here's one that is of some practical use, though. This is just a simple straight square. So somebody who's doing small, I don't know, simulated bricks or something, I suppose you could find a practical artistic use for this. Mine shows some evidence of having used it. Well, actually, what I did use it for, as I recall, were the legs on one of my ceramic boxes. This happened to make the best size for the little links that became the legs. So, there you go. It's all coming back to me now. You also get with this some blanks. These blanks, aluminum blanks that fit inside this die holder like this, can prove very valuable. You can modify these. You can also make what I'm going to call a die backer by making a larger opening in this. So this alone could prove to be very valuable, as you'll see in just a second. So anyway, ignoring the use of this and opting instead for one of the Scott Creek dies. This one's kind of cool looking. Maybe I can insert a close-up if you can't see that well. But at any rate, this will fit into the die holder of my Chinese clay art extruder, but there's a problem. There's a problem with this, and it's something to point out to you, so if you encounter it, you don't get frustrated. It's slightly undersized for this size extruder. And let me see if you can see it this way. This die that Scott Creek sent me is a little bit smaller than is the die for this particular clay gun that I'm using. Problem being is that it can fall in to the extruder barrel. It's just too small. The Scott Creek, good as it is and well made as they are, it's just too small, and yet I still want to use this because this makes the better extrusions. So what to do? I ordered this not realizing the difference in the dimensions, so I still wanted to use these. The answer is this, it's really simple, is you put this into your die holder if you happen to have one of these. If you have a Scott Creek, it doesn't make any difference. These are ready to go. But in my case, or if you had, say, one of your modified caulking guns, and you wanted to use something like this, you're going to face a little bit of a fit issue. It's simply fixed by wadding in some clay. Getting the extrusion in there, anchoring it in tight. Your barrel's going to screw down on that. It's going to hold it in place. If there's any clay in the way of the die opening itself, don't worry about that. It's going to come out in a second anyway. But at least this will hold it in place while you're getting the extruder ready to make the extrusion. So screw this in place, force it, do whatever you have to do. I think that's reasonably good. I think I can improve that. I may edit this out, I may not care. I guess the tip to pass on is to, this is worth noting, make sure that this die opening is in the center of this die holder. If you have it off kilter, the risk is that it's going to make extrusions that annoyingly keep curving on you. That's one of the things that you folks have cited to me most, is that you can't control the extrusion, so we're going to deal with that. But take the precaution to get this centered up. I think you'll be happier. At any rate, ready to put it back on. Much better. Okay. Again, you can't see this. Maybe I can't really zoom, but you can. So let's see if we can make an extrusion and see what happens. So here it goes. It's ready to go. That's easy enough. But look at that. It comes out wonky as hell. I mean, if that's what you want, man, you're home. But if you want it to be something like a makings of a, I don't know, cup handle or bowl handle or something, that's useless. So what are you going to do? I mean, what are you going to do? That's what we're going to talk about in the next segment. So stay tuned and let's see if we can take some of the mystery out of how to make these things make straight, useful extrusions. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Now, while I was off camera, I was working with this, And here are the tips to pass along to you as to how to get simple handle extrusions made with the minimum amount of frustration. Step one, you've loaded your die, you're ready to extrude, you have your full charge like we did. Take a look at the end of your extruder and see how your particular die is oriented. If you were smart enough to get it perfectly lined like this, you can extrude straight like this. If, however, you put it a little bit off kilter like mine is, that's all right. You can reset it if you want to get it perfect, or you can work with it just like this. Mine happens to be pointed somewhat like this. So all I'm going to do is, knowing that, I'm going to aim it so that the extrusion, the belly of the extrusion, the bottom of the extrusion that is going to come out along this way. And the key technique is to get some extrusion made. I can see it, it's coming out a little bit crooked, I can just straighten it up. But the thing I'm doing is I operate the extruder in short strokes, pull it back, watching it from overhead, and guiding the extrusion as you have it stabilized on your board. I happen to be using a clay-covered wedging board. You can use just about anything if you want, but this works really well. When I first started figuring this thing out, I think I even talked about it in the book, I insisted that you press this down, and when you do it on something that's porous, that's not going to make a bit of difference. If you're going to work it across something like a tabletop on my slab roller, then you might want to do that. But I found out that for most applications I have, I can just hold it with my finger and work it along the way. Okay, enough extrusion. So tear it off any way you want with your tool or with your thumb or what have you. And now you have the thing made to your satisfaction. It's certainly better off than this wonky nonsense that I came up with. Make extra, make it longer than you need for your handle or your pot lugs, whatever you're going to make. Know that you have enough extra that you can trim it off to get something cleaner. And then as you're working with these, getting them firmed up, find something. I just grabbed a Christmas wrapping cardboard tube to show you. I happen to have it in the drawer. These are hard to throw away. I just like these things. They're just good for stuff, you know. Anyway, use them as a way to set the shape of it, and then go to your next. So that's kind of the key here. The key instruction is, get it stabilized and know how the extrusion is going to come out. If you're left-handed like I am, then you're going to probably work along pulling as you go like this, or right-handed, exactly the same thing, but know where that die shape is and how it's going to come out, so you don't risk something like coming out all twisted, unless, like I said, unless that's what you want. Otherwise, practice always helps with extruding or anything else, and know that you have plenty of clay in here to do a lot of work. This thing holds a bunch of clay for this kind of extrusion. And then, like I said, practice with a few. You'll get it down. You get your timing down. I pointed out that you don't have to pull the thing in long strokes, but kind of work the drawing of the extrusion and the squeezing of the handle. If you're getting bubbles or tear, like in this case, slow down. If you see too much of that, or you hear too much popping, you have to do a better job of wedging your clay. And remember, use good soft clay. I preach that. So next up, we're going to talk about dies themselves, how to get them made to your liking, customize a few, and then we'll wrap up. Thanks a lot. We'll be right back. Oh, we're back for maybe this is part 3. We'll see how I edited it up. All right, so we did some extruding. And one thing I want to point out to you before I move on so I don't forget is that this thing is designed to move this plunger arm through the gun itself. And mine had a little bit of rust from neglect. Yours might get that way too. And over time and use from grabbing onto this, this plunger arm will get some striations developed in it, not a problem. The rust can be annoying to you to look at it and think that it's rusty, but here's the tip. Do not lubricate this particular part of your extrusion, or your clay gun, with WD-40 or oil. you don't want anything that's going to make it so that this doesn't grab this and push it through. Feel free to lubricate these parts. Mine happen to be, I believe, I guess they're cast aluminum, but at any rate, lubricate them if you're having any problem with this operating freely, but resist the temptation to slather on all kinds of silicone sprays and such in the interest of keeping this rust off of here. Because if you do, and this can't be grabbed and pushed through, then the whole mechanism is going to frustrate you. So leave this dry, use a little bit of fine grade steel wool or whatever you want, or just soap and water to get it cleaned up, and then you're ready to use it. Okay. Now we're down to the business end of this thing. Now we're looking at the die holder. I've taken the die holder off. There's a die. The die that I was using just a second ago is still in it. We're going to get rid of that. And we're going to set it aside. Another question comes up from time to time is about cleaning extruders. We can talk about that a little bit here too. You can pick all the clay you want off of it, and you still have some clay. You can go over and wash them in soapy water. But typically I just leave these to get dry, and then wash the dry clay off the big extruders as well as this. The dry clay comes off much quicker, so bear that in mind. Now then, here's all these dies. Had them before. God, you can get all kinds of them. All these poker chips and what have you. And you may find out that there isn't one of these that exactly suits your need, that you want to make your own die. So I'm going to move up the camera a little bit from this wide shot and bring it in right now and get it to where we can look at the tabletop together, because I'm going to do some cutting, and you're going to want to follow along as to how I make it and some of the experiments I do for the sake of showing you how to make your own dies. So let me get the camera reset and I'll be right back. I cleared the deck. I got the clay out of the way. I got all this stuff out of the way so we can do some serious work right here. Now, as I was saying in the setup, is that you have your die holder and you want to make your own die. And from an article I did a long time ago, you'll be able to tell in more detail exactly how I went about this, using the same kind of die in a large extruder. Now, I have to give credit to Jim Robeson, who some of you know of. He's in England. And Jim, for many years, was a demonstrator for North Star. I was there hawking their wares too at the NCCA shows, and Jim held an audience like nobody could. And one of the things that he did very well was trim his slab pots and such with nice trim pieces that he extruded, and his shapes and his dies were made from credit cards. So that's what I'm going to show you. So realize I didn't originate this scheme. It was Jim who I first saw it done by, and he did it quite capably. So we're going to need some credit cards, and it so happens that I have a bunch that good friend Bonnie sent me. I have a lifetime supply of these, and these are some that I've made over the years. If you're familiar with the article I was talking about, you see these very same credit card dies that I made. You can see them closer right there. This one was used for making an address sign, I believe. And there was also an article and a demonstration in the book about that, and I used this. Here's a trim piece. Here's a piece that in the extruder video that I did, I believe I used this for trimming out the one of the dish demos. So these hang around. They can get used anytime in one of the big extruders. But today we're going to make one for your clay gun. And what I did off camera was I took one of these and I drew a 2-inch, well actually I used one of the dies that came with my extruder as a template, laid it on the credit card, centering up the opening that I already made in the die. And once I had that drawn on, I used ordinary scissors and just cut it out. These things are easy to cut. The opening for each of these, for the opening, I used an X-Acto knife. Your choice of blades. My blade of choice is the number 11 Other people use stiffer blades. But those things are wicked sharp and it's easy to cut yourself, so you have to be careful. If you're not used to using one, practice, practice, practice. Do not cut yourself with them. They are wicked, and take it from my experience. They are very effective in terms of cutting out these corners and such, but boy, oh boy, do you want to start with a brand new blade that's extra sharp so it cuts well, no drag, and that you practiced and that you know exactly what to do, and have, if you're klutzy like me, have your band-aids ready. Anyway, this one's been cut to fit. It's designed to lay right in the die holder, just like that. Can you see that okay? Pretty sure you can. Just snaps right into place. But what's the question? The question is, if the clay is really, really stiff, is it going to blow out this die? Is it going to ruin it by trying to push some stiff clay through it? Or am I going to be making a little bit of extrusion only to find out the thing bends and distorts the shape? That's a key consideration. So let's see if one take we can prove whether that's a valid concern or not. So let's get these scraps. Here's what I cut out. Let's put this thing together, get the die holder on, and see what happens. Like I said, orient your extruder, or your clay gun, so it's going to have a good chance of coming out straightly. And let's just see what happens. Wow, the crowd, the audience is quiet. They're just spellbound, waiting to see if he's going to make a fool of himself or not. So, let's cut that off. I got a little bit of bulging. Can you see it? You probably can't very well on camera. A little bit of bulging there. It didn't really hurt the shape of the extrusion. I heard a little bit of popping, but I can't see any real evidence of it. That would only indicate that I rushed it when I was wedging the clay and getting it back in the barrel, because that was what I used. I re-wedged what I used before. But there's the shape. Relatively speaking, that's a nice big opening. That was not difficult to extrude. Just imagine if I was doing one of these ridiculous shapes like this. I couldn't have done it with both hands, I'm sure. So, like I said, for all intents and purposes, those are going to be used for something else. So, we proved that you can get some work done if you have the nice soft clay in there. You can get these kind of extrusions made using the same technique I showed before. No problem. But in some instances, you're going to face the need to have a backer die of some sort, and that's what I want to show next. So I'll be right back. Okay, so the topic is how to control for the fact that your handmade credit card die bulges a little bit and distorts the shape that you want. If that's a problem, your answer is a backer die. And as it so happens, as I was getting set up for the video, I didn't really have a good backer die. I'm going to insert a still image of David Hendley's backer dies that he uses. They'll demystify this for you just by looking at that image. And in my other articles and such, you've seen the same principle. But what I did was I went over to the bench and I grabbed a fender washer, one of these big ones. You can even find these at the hardware store most times as a 2-inch fender washer with a big opening. And the idea being is that it's designed to fit right behind your die, and I can't do it well because this isn't the right fender washer. So trust in what I'm going to show you with my still image inserts, that the principle is that you're going to put your die in place into your die holder just like I had it before, and then assuming that you had, well, in fact, here's a way to kind of get you the vision of it, is take, if you have an aluminum die like this one by chance, then you're going to want to cut out by saw by any means possible with a coping saw or other skill. Get this drilled out so that you have an opening that's just larger than is the die opening that you're trying to use. So in this particular case, the one that I was showing a second ago, is you could make an opening that was just a little bit larger than this. It doesn't have to be out to the edges, but just a little bit bigger than this so you don't see any of the backer die through the opening, and it'll give you all the support you need around the periphery of this when you're extruding. If you knew you were going to do a lot of this, it's certainly worth the time and trouble to build yourself a backer die. So I apologize for the sort of fake here because I didn't want to take the time to get the backer die made, but you understand the principle. You would simply take this, draw that shape on there, take it off, and using your coping saw or by other means, scroll saw if you have it, set it up so that you can cut that out. The aluminum cut's really easy. Then you have a good dedicated backer die for this setup and you'll get good reliable results. But as you saw when I was doing the demo, this did an acceptable job without it. So before you immediately assume you need a backer die, try your credit card. You can make for that matter, you could make, it's easy enough to cut, just take another credit card, cut it out the same way as this one, and use 2 or 3 of these. You don't have to fool with the aluminum then. Make 2 or 3 of these, a little bit oversized, stack them inside your holder, and without all the specialized tools, but just with your X-Acto knife, you can get these made up, and your scissors, and save yourself all the trouble of metal fabrication work. So try that instead. But anyway, that's enough of that. So what's left? I'm going to sign off for a second. I'm going to clear the decks, and I'm going to come back with some wrap-up thoughts, and then we'll take this in and get it edited and out to you guys. So one other thing comes to mind. I had done all the other demonstration of how to pull the extrusion along your board and get good results with that. But others have shown, and I think I showed at some point, that you can hold your clay gun vertically on the edge of a table, or here in this case it's on the edge of my board. And I set this up with a coil die. You can see it right there pretty clearly. This one is small enough diameter that it is hard to work with one hand for most. But the idea is you can use gravity to your benefit, and you can guide, much like you would with a large wall-mounted extruder, to make your coils this way. Once you get it started, don't worry too much about guiding it because you're going to be able to roll it anyway. Is that out of the frame? You can still see it. So that's another technique. Let gravity help you. This is, I think, especially good with the real small diameter coils and squares. So maybe I'll use this. Maybe I'll do this as I fade to black. Hey, thanks for listening today, everybody. If you have questions, I know you're going to comment, throw them around to each other. Those of you that are getting good results with your handheld extruders, please share with the others who are getting started with it. Any other tips that you have that I didn't think about, please pass them along. And I appreciate that. And most importantly, thanks for your time and attention, and thanks for your contribution to the group. It is much appreciated. Thanks. See you later now. Here's another quick tip. I was cleaning up after making the video for you and clearing out the unused clay. The simplest way to get that, rather than take the barrel off and try to push it out, is to take your die holder off, set it aside, and then start operating the plunger. Move that all the way through until the plunger itself gets to the very end and all your charge of clay is at the end, and then peel that off. Let this dry. You don't have to immediately go over to the faucet or break out the sponge or anything or cloths. You can let this dry out in here if you want. Take it apart, leave that sit like that, then give this a good soap and water wash out. Take a bottle brush if you want to clean it, pull a towel through it, whatever you want to do. So it's ready for next time, because I can tell in the use today, mine's pretty crusty in there. So I'll let that dry, the plunger dry, and everything will just go in the sink tomorrow, and it'll be ready to go. But here's your charge little that I had. Here's that back ready to wedge and put back in my bag. So keep that in mind, just makes it even easier. Thanks again.